Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Everything But the Money webinar. Philanthropy and legacy is our topic for today. I'm Michael Fisher, President and CEO of Client First Financial, coming to you from a beautiful downtown Fogelsville, Pennsylvania. So this is our third episode in the series that we've been putting all year about legacy planning. And in our first episode, we talked about what is legacy planning in general, and basically we talked about getting your principal values and beliefs, understanding what those are, and then putting them in alignment with your plan. And then once you had those two in alignment, then understanding the solutions that you had, were they also in alignment with those principal values and beliefs and your plan? But then the most important part of that was the importance of the family meeting, making sure that you properly communicate what your intentions are. As I mentioned in our first episode, we all have a legacy. It's who we are, how we're known, and how we want to be remembered. In episode 2, we took it a step further and really dove into what was the family meeting and the importance of having that. And in that episode, we talked about how 70% of all legacies fail. And primarily 60% of the time is because of a lack of communication, or 25% of the time it's the heirs aren't even prepared on what they need to do. And finally, 15% of the time, it's just that the legal documents aren't even put in place properly. But we also talk about the ethical will. The ethical will isn't a legal document, but it's almost like a letter of instruction where you're trying to communicate to your family like what you're most proud of, what you'd like to see continue, how you'd like to see family members use their inheritances, and what family traditions that you want to see carried on once you're no longer there. But today, we're going to talk about putting philanthropy into your legacy plan. And I am joined and very happy to have Laura McHugh, Chief Engagement Officer for the United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley. Laura, thank you for coming and joining our show today. And I look forward to having you get really engaged. But I want to give a brief overview about why it's so important that we have, philanthropy and what it's all about. So thanks again for coming on. And let me go on to what is philanthropy planning and why it is important. Paige, the next slide, please. So why it matters in legacy planning. Charitable giving can be a meaningful component of a legacy. Now, there's two different types of planning. There's what they call lifetime giving, and then there's planned giving. And really, there's the difference between the two is lifetime giving is you're giving while you're still alive, but not necessarily can also continue on after you're no longer with us. And planned giving usually happens after you're no longer with us. It's something that I want to see this asset or this purpose continue on. Now, sometimes you can do planned giving while you're alive, but for the most part, it happens after you're no longer with us. And some examples of both types of giving. When you hear planned giving, a lot of times you'll see bequests made in a will or in an obituary. A lot of times you'll see in lieu of giving flowers, please give towards the United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley, for example. Whereas lifetime giving can be utilizing things like donor advised funds, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, or even setting up a charitable trust, charitable remainder trust, and things like that. But now, what I'd like to really dig into is, what really motivates people to be legacy focused in their philanthropy. And that's when I want to bring in Laura. Laura, hello, thank you for being on the show today or the webinar. So what I'd like us to do is just kind of ask you a couple of questions here. And Paige, you can drop that. Thank you very much, Paige. And so Laura, do you see any trends in donor motivations, like shifting from obligation to impact type investing or giving?
Absolutely. And first of all, Michael, thank you so much for raising the topics that you raise, for your support of so many different organizations and community, and for making sure that information like this is available. So thank you for the work that you're doing to support financial education. It is so valuable and so important. We are seeing a lot of different trends in donor motivations. And I would say that one of the easiest ways to think about it is people are really shifting from giving out of obligation to giving because of their values and the impact that they want to create. So when you talk about legacy, that is so much a part of even why people give while they're still living and during their lifetime giving. We're United Way, and there was a long time, a very deep, long time history, especially in the Greater Lehigh Valley, and a rich history. And it's where that phrase "I gave at the office" started. And
Hmm.
so people really gave and gave generously for many, many, many years. And in recent years, we have noticed the number of people with propensity to give more is increasing. So it's so much more than somebody giving $10 during this fund drive or $100, during a specific fund drive. People are really considering their investments in philanthropy just that, they're investments. And we're grateful that as people build their financial plans, they're including philanthropy in that. We know some of the main trends that we're seeing as part of that are that people are really giving to drive impact. So that means that nonprofits need to really be able to clearly demonstrate their value, the outcomes, and the results that they're driving at to be able to attract donors and donors of high net worth. Additionally, trust and authenticity are critical. So you need to, as a nonprofit, be really transparent in what you're doing, what you're offering, making it really clear and accessible how people can access and understand the impact that their dollars are driving, and that transparency is incredibly, incredibly important. And
So let me
finally,
ask you this,
yeah,
Laura. I didn't, because one area, the new phrase is impact investing,
yes,
impact philanthropy. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
yep.
So, give an example if you could. So, for some people that they're hearing that for the first time.
Absolutely. So, what we're seeing increasingly, and I'll use our United Way as an example, we have three main areas of focus. So, we do an awful lot in community as a hub for philanthropy. And then we have three main areas where we're driving results driven impact. We have community stability work that drives food, housing, those basic needs services. We do work in healthy aging. But by far, our largest area of investment is around the area of education. It's where we put more than 80% of our unrestricted dollars out into the communities we serve. And it's also where we do our most direct service and impact. So increasingly, you can trace the trends. Donors are telling us, I want my dollars to go toward this specific work or this specific item. So increasingly, we might see donors saying, I want to support healthy aging. I want to support food programs. I want to support education. And one of the things that's really important that the nonprofits are doing is tracing that and being able to share back with the donor. If you care about education, we're going to close that loop completely with you on a regular basis around how are your dollars driving impact in
Okay,
that particular
fantastic.
area.
All right, all right. So,
Yeah.
are you seeing, well, you kind of mentioned this already, that families and individuals are just approaching charitable giving differently today than they were years ago. I mean,
Right.
a lot of folks do what I like to call peanut butter philanthropy. That's where
Yep.
they give like $100 here, $50 there, and all nonprofits, they'll take anything that they can get because really that's what keeps them going. But it
Mhm.
doesn't really have an impact. Now, it sounded like you said there's a change in that where people are starting to give more to really focus in and have more of might be more meaningful way of giving money to an organization. You're seeing that?
Yeah, and I just want to reflect that peanut buttering, right? That is where you're going wide, not deep.
Yes,
We
yes. Thank
we
you.
are seeing actually an increase in the number of people who want to go deep. So really holding the line on the number of people who want to go wide, and we love that because you're becoming a part of something. United Way's annual campaign is the biggest annual campaign supporting nonprofit work in the community in the entire Lehigh Valley. We want wide on that all day, right? But we really need to be responsive as nonprofits to that donor interest around giving deep. And what we're seeing, and I think you touched on this earlier, is values alignment is an incredibly important motivator that we are seeing emerging in philanthropy. And so donors really want to give to specific causes that they've either had a personal connection to themselves or have developed over time. So education is a great example. I'll share myself personally. I was raised by educators. I had an opportunity for a great education in my life. That isn't a cause that's incredibly important to me personally. So it's probably not surprising that my personal investments might want to go deeper in those spaces. And so when you even talk about that word philanthropy, the word philanthropy is from the Greek word love of humanity, right? And so when you think about values, how many of us were raised in families where giving back or volunteering was a family value? And so it's not surprising that people, as they're putting their legacies together, that they want to make sure that that part of that love for humanity, that love for giving back, that love for volunteering is secured in the future and certainly secured in their next generation.
Okay, so do you see well, how do you see the younger generation? How are they influencing the way people or families are giving now? I mean, that's a lot different than their parents, I would imagine. And I'm starting to get the sense just because, technology has changed so dramatically. I mean, I grew up in an era where, you had to turn on a radio to listen to or turn on a TV. You didn't have a smartphone. You had one phone in the kitchen and maybe one upstairs in the office. But how are young people changing the way that we're giving their philosophies?
Yeah, I'll touch on two things that I think are really interesting. So, first of all, it's how we give. So, people who are in that 65 plus generation, they really want to work, especially if they're giving a significant gift. They really want to work with an individual. They want to develop a relationship with a trusted individual at the nonprofit of their choice. And so, that's a relationship that develops over time. I'm not saying the younger generation doesn't value the relationship, but they value supplemental tools that drive that. So when I'm making my annual gift, it is really nice to be able to have a login and a portal that I can see and go, oh, where did my donation go? What time of year did I give? I can access my tax receipt really quickly and easily. So the marriage of digital access tools, which we are so accustomed to now because of e-commerce, with the relationship building element is becoming increasingly important. So that's one. The other is younger generation. So people in their especially 20s and 30s, they want to feel a personal connection. And often, as I was saying, it goes beyond just something that they've had an experience with. They want to be able to touch it and feel it. So the opportunity to have events that people can participate in, the opportunity to have volunteer experiences that people can participate in is becoming increasingly important among volunteers who are in sort of that transitional stage in their 20s, 30s, and then turning into their 40s. And what
Hmm.
we're increasingly seeing is people saying, and by the way, I would like to bring my family. How can I get my then, 8-year-old, my 12-year-old thinking about philanthropy, thinking about volunteerism, giving back. So it's much different than writing a check today. It's an entire experience.
Okay, so it's all about the experience. That's what the
Mhm.
younger generations. It's more about the experience, less about, hey, here's the money. No, I'm going to go on and do something else. Okay, that's very interesting. I
Yeah.
never, I didn't see it that way, but I didn't. I'm not out there with families just getting started. I'm at the next phase in life where my daughter is now starting on her own. So if I'm seeing it
Yeah.
from, a father's point of view, not a young family's point of view. So let me ask you this. What role do you see the philanthropic advisor like myself? What role do you see in helping, a person align their values with their strategic giving?
It is incredible. That role cannot be underestimated. It is the critically important role around that long-term planning to help make sure that what a donor, what a client really wants to achieve long-term is married and carried out. So I really appreciated when you were talking earlier about the role that the philanthropic advisor plays in the documentation, the role that the philanthropic advisor plays in helping to set the table for the communication, the family meeting. It's so critically, critically important. In fact, at our organization, we actually end up getting involved in those conversations typically. We want to join those conversations, and it's often the philanthropic advisor who's helping to set the parameters around that conversation and how are we getting involved. And so when you talk about that family conversation, how important that you have a face to associate with this, and it's that philanthropic advisors connective tissue role that really connects and helps to be the glue and
Yeah.
making sure that it's all carried out according to the donor and client's wishes, which is what we're all trying to do, is to make sure that what was agreed upon is exactly what's carried out to a T.
Yeah, well, okay. I'm glad to hear you say that because that's something I've been striving for the last 5 to 7 years now. Is as my clients have gotten older, it's like, hey, we've done well. So how do you see yourself, passing on this this wealth that you've
Yeah.
accumulated? Now, everyone's different. That goes back to the principal values and beliefs. If family's important to you, that's fine. But more and more folks are starting to say, you know what? I always liked this, or something impacted them. And that's something that I think will go on to, one other question. It's like, what motivates somebody to want to give back? What have you seen in your experiences, that, is it, please tell me, what have you seen?
Yeah, there's been great research around the different motivators, right, for donors, and there are so many different ones. One is it could be a family value, right? So it's just something they were raised with and is incredibly important to them. Another could be a personal experience that they've had. So, if unfortunately you've had the experience of being food insecure and you are now in a position where you are living with abundance, you want to share that because you understand exactly what it feels like to not know where your next meal is coming from. And so we're really incredibly honored when people choose to share stories with us about how their personal lives and their personal experiences have shaped why they are making the philanthropic choices that they're making. For some, it is frankly a very practical choice. And that's another way that the philanthropic advisor comes in. There's a tax benefit, right? There's an important tax benefit that they want to take advantage of. They want to make sure that their dollars are doing the most good that they possibly can. And so they're going to leverage different, levers and tax benefits and tax deductions that they can in order to achieve their philanthropy goals. And so there's all kinds of different motivations, but that's a really important one too that we never want to overlook.
Yeah, and for some folks that tax benefit is what motivates them. For others, it's yeah, the experience. I got involved in food insecurity because I actually sat in a meeting. I'm a Kutztown Lion, okay, and we had somebody come in. He was called the Potato Man, and he started going over, and he grows potatoes to give
I know
to.
the potato man. Yep.
Okay,
It's incredible work. Keep
yeah.
going.
He gave money to the Berks County Food Bank because he found out the fresh produce was not being provided. And when I heard how many people were food insecure in Berks County, I then came over to Lehigh County and just the Lehigh Valley. And as a matter of fact, I went to the United Way and I was able to speak to someone about that. And then I was even more taken back that even places where you think everyone is well-to-do. You might be, but your next door neighbor could be so food insecure, you just don't know. So it's almost like it's hidden because people have dignity and they don't want to say, hey,
That's right.
this is why, I don't talk about it. But
Yeah.
that's what motivated me. So sometimes it is something that you just come across. And yeah, it's not always a tax deduction, but believe me, that helps as well. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And I would just add to that, Mike, you would be shocked at what the data is telling us. Some of the most of the school districts in the area that you would think of as some of the most affluent, well-off um, school districts, you look at their data and they have 25 to 30% of their students on free and reduced lunch.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a
So
perception and a reality. And as a nonprofit, one of the things that we want to do and make sure that we're doing well is helping people see where the need is and doing it in such a way that it's experience that you cannot forget. So I've heard donors describe it as once you see it, you can't unsee it. So once
right.
that light bulb moment goes off for you, that ability, and so it's our job to make sure that we're creating that experience where you can really understand what the needs are in our community and help, maybe somebody who's in a bubble see outside of their bubble, see what's happening next door or in
Yeah.
the next neighborhood over or in the school
Yeah.
down the street.
Absolutely. So now let's move on to some tactics and tools,
Mm,
that we can talk about. So so right now, trends in donor motivations. We kind of talked about that. Okay, immediate donations. All right, benefits and impact during a donor's lifetime. So we talk about immediate donations. We talked about that already, giving a little bit, but now more and more people are giving bigger gifts to more specific areas because they find a place that motivates them to give back. And that, we talk about food insecurity, but it can also be the arts. Yours is education. It could be nature. I mean, there's so many different areas, and they all kind of come together to make the community a better place. But when we talk about planned giving vehicles, most people will give through their wills, but then there's charitable remainder trusts, which are a little more involved. They're not complicated things, but they're a little more involved. But the one I wanted to touch on even more was the donor advised fund. And for those who don't know what a donor advised fund, I'm going to make it real simple for you. And because it is real simple, basically what you do is you give a lump sum of cash or property. Usually it's a highly appreciated security or a stock that you may have had for many years. You give it to a foundation. Now there's two types of foundations. There's local foundations, community foundations, and they're throughout the country. And then there's a few national ones, and two that come to mind are the American Endowment Foundation, and Fidelity also has a foundation as well, and I believe Vanguard as well. So what you do is you put this money in to the foundation. Now you're allowed to get an immediate tax deduction for that. So there, if that motivates you, you have that tax deduction. But once you do that, you then can dole it out to charities or nonprofits of your choosing. Now, what's really good and fun about the donor advised fund is very easy to set up, no tax reporting or filing. The foundation does all the legwork for you and will also make sure that who you're giving to actually qualifies for as a 501c3. So that is very important. The other thing about it is if you want to give anonymously, you can do that through the donor advised fund. And for some people, they don't want the publicity, but also they don't want to be on everyone's mailing list. Okay. And that's something that sometimes turns people off. So you can give anonymously, you can give bigger gifts. And then the last thing about a donor advised fund is once you are no longer here, you could have a family member or a trusted advisor be assigned to that donor advised fund to carry on your legacy going forward. So it's a really great tool. It's a tax deduction today, but it's a giving vehicle for tomorrow, and you can really make an impact and without it costing you a lot of money. So that's one that I think more and more people are taking advantage. And Laura, have you seen an uptick in the donor advised fund?
They're growing incredibly rapidly. And in fact, barely, a week or a month goes by here at United Way where we are not either the recipient of a payout from a donor advised fund or we're getting questions from a donor around how to set one up. Who are the best partners to work with? How can United Way serve that? And so it's actually one of the fastest growing avenues of philanthropy. And it's growing so fast that, in fact, it more than doubled from 2018 to 2019 nationally. It's now representing well over a $52 billion in
Wow.
payouts via grants. And that was in 2022. So it's gone up since then. That was the latest data I could put my finger on. And that's more than doubled since 5 years prior. This is a very helpful, very, as you said, it's complicated but simple at the same time, right? Like
Yeah.
It's a really simple process for a donor to set up, and then the ability to make multiple grants to multiple organizations has been really an important vehicle for many, many people. And it's certainly one of the growing trends we're seeing locally.
Yeah, and again, it has the tax advantages. It
Mhm.
amplifies your legacy through that strategic giving, and there are other programs that are out there. Now, being that we're in Pennsylvania, there's other ways that you can get tax credits through a variety of programs.
Mhm.
One is the EITC, which is the Educational Improvement Tax
That's
Credit,
right.
and the NAP, the Neighborhood Assistance Program. And these are all ways that without you giving out more than you're already giving, you can make an impact and again get a tax credit if that's important to you. So, but I just think having all these different strategies out there is so important. But once you implement them, I'm going to go back to the bottom of this slide. Have that conversation with the family and the advisors. And when I say advisors, it's also the attorney, the accountant, and the key players. It may be the nonprofit. Hey, this is what I'm planning on doing, so everyone knows what the heck's going on. So, do you have anything to add regarding that?
I would just add that we are seeing such a trend as well in terms of people getting their next generation involved. So, people who are in their 50s, 60s on up, we now have so many families where we see multiple generations of families giving to a single organization. And maybe that started for a reason, but I don't know about you. I don't give to some place because my mom or dad told me, I'm a grown woman. I don't give anywhere where my mom or dad tells me to give anymore. I give because maybe I was introduced to an organization, but I continue to give because that organization proves its value to me as a donor and a supporter. And so we are seeing that trend continue, that we have multiple generation families. I'm thinking of one that has at least three generations who's currently giving to us, and multiple, cousins, aunts, uncles, the whole thing, kids and grandkids engaged. And it's very, very important that the first time somebody is hearing about an organization isn't when you're planning your legacy. If they're important to you, get the next generation involved, invite them to be a part of it so that they can build their own connection to it as well.
Well, and there are certain levels when you go through this philanthropic process. First, you give a little bit just to get to know the organization, but then it buys you time to really dig deeper
That's
and
right.
find out what they're all about. Getting involved, whether it's through volunteering or going to their events that they have, and understanding. And then by then, you start developing a philosophy that'll allow you to get bigger and more and more. And then the tools that we're talking about here, the tactics and things like that, that's just a means to an end. See, those are the solutions that I was talking about when you want to be in alignment with your principal values and beliefs and the plan. Okay. These are all great, but if your philosophy is, or your value is, hey, I want to give back, and here's the area that means the most to me because over time or whatever reason motivated you, this is why I've done this, and it's so important. And again, aligning all that so it makes sense, and then communicating it makes even more sense. So, any other thoughts before I move on to questions here?
Yeah, I think this is such valuable information, and thank you so much for kind of setting the table for this as you do so many important conversations.
Yeah, yeah. So, we had a couple of people submit some questions here, and before the program even started. And here's one that I have that let's see if we can get this answer. Are there any pitfalls? Oh, I just lost my question. Are there any pitfalls that you see? Paige, can you pull that up again? Because I don't see it on my screen here, and I want to make sure I got it correct. Um, are there any common pitfalls
Mhm.
or mistakes people make when trying to balance charitable giving with, I guess, ordinary or everyday expenses? Do you see any common pitfalls?
I think it's exactly what we talked about earlier, Michael, and I'd be curious your response to this as well. It's not having the clear communication with family members early and often around where they want their legacy gifts to go and how they want their legacy to be carried on in community. So that's probably the one that's most visible for me. And also, having conversations around, maybe you're moving from maybe you're moving into a state of fixed income. Have that conversation. It doesn't mean that you can't continue giving. Maybe you can't continue giving a lifetime gift to the same level that you did while you were in the workforce, or maybe your health situation was different. But if an organization is important to you and you have been special to them and a longtime donor to them, they are they would love to continue to have a conversation with you and to keep you engaged and informed, even if the gift is not at the same level.
Yeah, or it could then switch to, hey, it's something that I'm going to bequest to you, or put in
That's
the
right.
will. I can't give right now, but if there's anything left over, maybe you guys can benefit from that. So the one pitfall is, don't feel guilty if you can't
Mm.
do what you once did. All right, there's nothing wrong. No one's going to think any less of you if you just can't do it for one reason or another. And sometimes when a person moves to another area, they might feel that sense, well, I'm there, but I'm not. They might lose that connection. They might. Again, don't feel guilty about that. Do the best you can. And that's probably the biggest pitfall I see is guilt. I can't do what I used to do.
Yes, giving should feel good always. We
Yeah,
never want anybody giving till it hurts. We want you to give until it feels good.
yeah,
And that
absolutely.
amount can change over the course
Yeah,
of someone's
yeah.
lifetime.
And Paige, do we have another question? Okay. How can a smaller community focused contributions be as meaningful as large donations in, I guess, shaping your legacy planning? So
Such a
for
good
me,
question.
it's this is where the education comes in. Okay. It's like you start off giving a little bit, but then as you're giving to all these various organizations, you may start slowly focusing on, like, I like one better than the other for whatever reason. All right. Or something motivated you just to go this direction. So every nonprofit, as I said earlier, is going to take anything that you give, and they value that more than anything else. But as you get more involved and understand better, your gift will, instead of giving 10 $100 gifts, you give one gift to one organization or two organizations. So you start honing in. So that's how you can take the same amount of smaller donations and make a bigger impact. Your thoughts on that, Laura?
Yeah, I mean, that is the United Way, right? So when we think about that word united, in our organization, we're currently distributing about $26 million dollars a year directly into nonprofits that serve our communities as well as communities around the country. That's not coming from three donors who write massive checks. That is coming from 11,000 donors who give what they can. Because what I can, or what you can, or what some of our guests on today's webinar, that's going to be different. Those are personal decisions that have to be driven by you and your family. And what we do at United Way is, well, Michael's gift combines with Laura's gift, combines with Diane's gift, combines with Marcy's gift, combines with Paul's gift. All these gifts collectively together are what that united front is, being able to
Yeah.
drive change together. And really no organization should be reliant on any, handful of donors. A good organization, as you're investigating different organizations that might be important to you, and a good thing to look at is, do they have a diverse funding stream? Are they getting funding from a lot of different streams to make sure that they have a sustainability plan for their revenue?
And that all comes in part of the getting to know the organization.
Right.
Yes, yes. So the more transparent they are, the better it's going to be. The more you can focus in on, I like their philosophy, I like what they're doing, and I like the way they're running the business. I mean, nonprofits are businesses. Let's not kid ourselves. And the ones, some run better than others. So that's very, very important. So, Paige, do we have any other questions for Laura or myself? How do you think trends in philanthropic giving might evolve over the next 5 to 10 years? How do you think the trends are going to change?
Yeah, I think we're already starting to see the change in generational giving, but I was really encouraged when I was just kind of pulling up some quick data to see how many people in their 20s and 30s, I know we're kind of focused on legacy planning here, how many people in their 20s and 30s have included philanthropic giving in their legacy plans, in their planned gifts for the future, and in their wills and documents. Actually, the trend is going up. So if you're looking at overall, you will see a higher percentage of people in their 20s and 30s, including charitable gifts in their legacy plans than in their 50s and 60s even. It's actually really encouraging, and I'm really hopeful and glad to see that philanthropic advisors are really bringing those questions to the forefront and helping people make those decisions and have those conversations earlier. So I was really encouraged by that.
Yeah, and I also think that with the baby boomers now
That's right.
coming to, I don't want to say the end, but as they're getting older and pass on, they have all this money, that what they call it, the wealth transfer.
Yes.
And that's why it's important that mom and dad start thinking about that if they haven't already. What do you want, and how do you want this? How do you want to be remembered? Here's what I'd like to see you do with this inheritance. And that's a conversation I think that'll even lead to even bigger and better shifts. But I'd like to hear that the folks in their 20s and 30s are like already starting to
Oh,
think
yeah.
that way. Um, so that's fantastic because it's like we said, it's so important that we continue the tradition or the legacy of the nonprofit because they're not going to go away. We need them, but and they need the support from anywhere they can get it. So, Paige, lastly, any more questions? That's it. Okay. Well, Laura, I want to thank you so much for being part of my webinar today. It was a great conversation. And for those of you who are looking or came on late, this webinar will be on the Client First Financial website. That's clientfirstfinancial.com. And first is 1ST, just so you know that. But if you'd like to reach out to myself, our information is right there on the screen. And if you'd like to reach out to Laura McHugh, and you have questions about how the United Way can help you, we have Laura's information down at the bottom. And again, if you need any more information, go to our website and we'll be able to get you all the information, a rebroadcast of this and our other webinars. And if you, for some reason, need Laura's information, contact information, you can still come to us, and we'll gladly pass it on to Laura and the folks there at United Way. And once again, this our next webinar will be sometime probably in early November, and it's going to be about the trusted advisor. We will have a guest speaker. We're still trying to pinpoint that person right now. We're just trying to get our schedules all in line. But Laura, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was a great conversation. And again, thanks again for just doing everything that you do at United Way and for helping me out today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for all you do for the community, Michael.
Okay. All right, everyone. You all have a nice day.